So guys, today I'm gonna react to her story. Let's see.
My daughter forgot Captain Fluffington at Grandma's house, and that stupid stuffed rabbit is the reason I heard my own car get stolen from the living room. We had already said goodbye twice, loaded her snack cup, buckled her car seat, and pulled halfway out of the driveway when Lily patted her lap and froze. "Mommy, where's Captain?" I checked the passenger seat, the floor, the cup holders, even though I already knew. The gray rabbit with one button eye was still inside. "We'll get him tomorrow," I said. Lily's face crumpled. "He'll be scared." I was tired. It was getting dark, and my car was still running because I thought this would take 10 seconds. I unbuckled her anyway. Grandma opened the door laughing. "Back already?" Lily ran past her in socks, yelling, "Captain's missing." I left my purse and phone on the front seat because the car was right there in the driveway with the headlights shining through the living room window. We checked the couch. Nothing. Under the coffee table. Nothing. Behind the basket of dog toys. Nothing. Lily dropped to her knees and shoved both hands between the couch cushions. Outside, an engine revved. At first, my brain refused to understand the sound. I turned toward the window, just as my car reversed out of Grandma's driveway. The open passenger door swung once before slamming shut. My purse was still inside. My phone was still inside. The car seat was inside too. Grandma grabbed her phone and called 911 while I stood frozen in the living room, one hand gripping the curtain. For one awful second, all I could picture was Lily's little shoes hanging above that empty car floor. Then she tugged on my sleeve. "Mommy!" I turned around. She was barefoot on Grandma's rug, holding Captain Fluffington by one floppy ear. He'd been wedged behind the couch cushion the whole time. 20 minutes later, police found my car behind a closed car wash with the front bumper cracked and my purse dumped across the seat. The officer kept saying we were lucky. Lucky the thief only wanted the car. Lucky I had brought Lily inside. Lucky the car seat was empty. I looked down at Captain Fluffington tucked under her chin. I had gone back for a toy. I came back with my daughter. My daughter forgot. My best employee vanished mid-shift. The email was a single line.
5:12 a.m. in the morning. And I'm not tired. Outside is shining
My best
bright.
employee vanished mid-shift.
Okay.
My best employee vanished mid-shift. The email was a single line. "Family emergency. I'll be back when I can." 3 days passed with no updates, no texts, nothing. She had never even been late. I called her number and a man answered who said he'd never heard of her. I sat at my desk and typed her name into Google, praying I didn't find an obituary. Hundreds of results with her name filled my screen. They weren't obituaries. They were news articles, all published in the last 72 hours, all about the same woman. A contract killer. Wanted internationally. Arrested in Europe after a failed hit. I told myself it was a coincidence. A woman with the same name, and I clicked the photo. It was her LinkedIn headshot, the one I approved when she onboarded, the same face I'd seen in dozens of video conferences. I kept scrolling. She had been on the run for years, hiding somewhere in Eastern Europe, using a VPN to clock in every morning and spend 8 hours answering customer complaints about shipping delays, all while being a wanted hitwoman. I picked up my phone to call HR and put it back down 3 times because I had no idea how to begin that conversation. I went back to the article. The name of her target was familiar. I knew that name. I typed it into our order management system, and there he was. Full name, address, and phone number. She was the last one who viewed his profile. She hadn't just been hiding behind a customer service job, she had used it to find the address of her target, and she was still thoughtful enough to let management know she'd be out of office while police were knocking on her door. I'm glad her customer service skills were better than her aim. My best employee vanished. My fiancé proposed, and I cried tears of joy. But while walking home, a car swerved right at me. I screamed, and my fiancé shoved me out of the way. The car slammed into him and drove off, but he flew 60 feet and hit his head on the concrete. In the hospital, doctors told me he'd live, but he had severe brain damage and likely wouldn't even remember my name. I walked into his room and showed him my engagement ring, but he just stared through me with these lifeless eyes. My lip quivered, and then the doctor told me he'd also need to relearn to talk. We walked into the speech therapist's office, and I wasn't sure he'd ever be normal again, but then she told him the rules. "I'm gonna say a word, and you have to say a word similar to it." It took him a few minutes to understand, but then she said, "cat." He thought for a few minutes and said, "aminal." I squeezed his hand, and the therapist said, "water." He replied, "dink." And when I laughed, he looked at me with this goofy smile like he didn't understand why I was laughing. But then she said, "happiness." It was a big word, and I didn't expect him to get it because he was just staring ahead blankly. But then he pointed his finger at me. "Happiness. Mia." My jaw dropped. That was my name. And despite everything, he associated it with happiness. I started crying. The therapist shook her head. "No, that's wrong." But my boyfriend kept nodding. "Happiness, Mia." I took his hand and cried tears of joy, knowing no matter what will make it. My fiancé I'd just buckled my little sister in her car seat when I realized my keys were inside and panicked when I couldn't open the door. I yelled, "help," and yanked the handle, but our school security guard grabbed my shoulder and pulled me away. "I just caught you red-handed. You're going to jail, car thief." I grasped his shoulders and shook them hard before pointing through the window. "That's my sister, and today is the hottest day of the year. If we don't get her out soon, she could pass out from the heat." He calmly tapped the glass. "Ma'am, do you know this thief?" But my sister was 2 years old, so she just waved at him with a smile. He nodded slowly. "Looks like that's a no." I pulled out my student ID with shaking hands and showed it to him, but he started laughing. That's obviously forged. You probably made it at home. I looked at my sister, and her cheeks were turning red from the heat. My heart started pulling out of my chest, so I begged the guard, please just break the glass and get her out. But he just wagged his finger. Nice try. That's destroying evidence. Then he pulled traffic cones off his cart and coned off the car with my sister still in it. I saw her lay her palm flat against the glass, and sweat began pouring down her face due to the heat. She started crying, but I could barely hear her through the glass, and that made my blood boil. So I ran past the guard and yanked the handle myself, but he dragged me back again and lifted his radio. The suspect is attempting forced entry. I pointed at the window fogging up from her breathing and screamed, she's overheating. She needs my help. He leaned in close to the fog and squinted his eyes. Interesting. Maybe she's on some chemicals. That's when my sister got spooked by his face and slapped the glass. The security guard yelled, the accomplice is getting aggressive, and swung his radio up to point the antenna at her, but the metal tip smacked the window and shattered the whole thing. I dove through, unbuckled my sister, and pulled her out with shaking hands. Her arms locked around my neck, so I told her, I'm so glad you're okay, and held her until she stopped crying. The guard stood frozen, whispering, I destroyed the evidence. I held my sister and told him he'd better cone himself off. He looked at his cones. Then he actually picked up a cone, placed it in front of his own shoes, and radioed in his location. I'd just buckled my little sister. A woman stormed over while I was pushing my son David on the swing and told me, get away from that child. Where are his real parents? I told her David was my son and took his hand to leave, but she stepped in front of me and blocked my path. You're not going anywhere with him, you sick woman. I tried to walk around her, but she ripped David's hand out of mine, picked him up, and stepped back. He screamed and reached for me, but she pulled him against her chest and turned away. The whole park stopped and stared. She set David down on the grass behind her and crouched in front of him. It's okay, sweetie. Tell me where your real mommy is. You're safe now. David sobbed and pointed at me. That's my mommy. Mommy, please. The woman turned David's face toward her and shook her head. No, honey. Look at her skin. Now look at your skin. She pointed at his arm. It's different. She's not your mommy. She took you. David cried harder and tried to push past her, but she held him in place. I went to step around her, but she stood up and shoved me with both hands. I hit the grass hard. She turned to the rest of the park and screamed, this woman kidnapped a black child. Somebody call the police. Other parents pulled out their phones, and one of them was already on the line with 911. She picked David up against her hip and started carrying him toward her SUV. He kicked and reached for me, but she placed him in her car. I ran towards him, but she smiled at me and got in. Just as she was about to press the accelerator, the cops arrived. They asked what was going on, and she stepped out of her car and said, she kidnapped a black child. Arrest her. I pulled David's adoption certificate out of my bag and handed it to the officer. He read it, looked at the woman, and told her to get my son out of her car right now. She stammered, but look at them. Their skin is... He told her she had 5 seconds before she was being arrested for attempted kidnapping of a minor. She went pale and immediately unbuckled David's seatbelt, and he sprinted to me. Then the officer cuffed her anyway. David looked at her with tears still on his face and said, she's scary. Her face crumpled as she got in the squad car because the child she was protecting now saw her as a monster. A woman stormed. The owner, Jerry, stormed in during a busy Friday night shift and immediately turned off the music. He told every customer they had to leave right now without paying. Everyone was shocked, but Jerry just ushered them out. Our whole staff started asking what was going on, but the second the last customer left, Jerry instantly padlocked the front door. None of my staff are leaving. Jerry pulled out his phone and started making phone calls immediately, calling corporate, his lawyers, the police. Our line cook, who never showed emotion and no one ever heard speak, asked if this was really necessary, but Jerry ignored him and ordered every staff member to gather in the back. When we did, I noticed my sister wasn't there. She was working with me tonight, but I couldn't see her. She'd told me earlier she was feeling sick, so I presumed she'd gone home. But then Jerry walked up to us with his hand out. Everyone who has keys to the back freezers, hand them over right now. 5 of us gave him our keys, including me and the line cook. You see, our restaurant had 5 freezers in the back, and each key unlocked a different freezer. He marched the 5 of us to the back and stood in front of the first freezer. He started testing every single key. The first one didn't fit. The second didn't either. My heart was pounding, and when I looked beside me, the line cook was just standing completely still. Jerry kept muttering under his breath while trying the keys, but then he tried the key belonging to the line cook and the freezer opened. Jerry turned to the line cook immediately. Stand against the wall, hands in the air, don't move. The line cook didn't say a word and backed up against the wall, his face unreadable. Jerry told us, hold his arms against the wall, don't let him move. We were all confused, but did it anyway. But then Jerry pointed at me. Not you, you need to see this. I was shaking as I let go of the line cook. Me and Jerry walked into the freezer, and he pointed at one specific container with tears in his eyes. My hands were trembling as I lifted the lid. My legs immediately gave out. My sister was inside. Her skin was blue, and her eyes were frozen open. I noticed a faint glow through her pocket, and when I reached in and pulled out her phone, one message was typed out to me, but never sent. Please help. The line cook locked me in the freezer. Please. I turned around and saw officers cuffing the line cook. I dropped to my knees and screamed at him. Why? But his face stayed completely still. I don't know. I just wanted to see what it would feel like. The owner, Jerry, I tucked my toddler into her crib for nap time, but she refused to sleep and kept pointing at the birds outside the window. I want to fly like them. I told her she wasn't a bird, but then I heard a massive crash behind me. I turned and saw my husband was hauling a giant fan into the room. I got this 80% off on sale, babe. Look how powerful it is. He cranked it to full before I could respond, and the wind hit me so hard I stumbled backward. But then something shrieked, "Mommy!" behind me. My toddler had climbed onto the windowsill while I wasn't looking to reach for the birds, but now the wind from the fan had shoved her onto the ledge. I lunged towards her, screaming, "Turn the fan off!" But I wasn't fast enough. The fan's wind pushed my 2-year-old out of the second-story window. I watched her tip and bolted for the stairs, gripping my head in horror. My husband ran after me, screaming, "Babe, calm down. It's gonna be okay. Everything is fine." But I wasn't listening or going to calm down. I burst through the back door, hyperventilating and pale with fear. And then I saw my daughter, bouncing and giggling in a massive foam pit I'd never seen. My husband tapped my shoulder. I forgot to mention, the foam pits were on sale too. I told you everything was fine. I was still shaking when my daughter looked up at me with her arms stretched out wide. "Mommy, I flew like the birds." I tucked my toddler into her crib for nap time, but she